Hi there and welcome to another Axis and Ohs video. This one is looking at some of the changes that have happened recently using this thing called input events. So there's been a couple of changes. I'm also going to use a helicopter for the first time. I've not flown helicopters before, but somebody asked in the comments, can I show them how to do the switch panel for this particular aircraft. It's no different from doing any other aircraft, and it shows up the input events quite nicely. So let's have a look at how it all works. Before we get too deep into it, let's have a quick look at what's happening in Axis and Ohs. I'm not going to go through every single part of it, but for those familiar with Axis and Ohs over the years know that there was an entry here not only to read the L vars but to read the B vars, the H variables, the B variables. That's gone. We're not really meant to use them anymore. They're still available if you know what you're doing with them and how to work with them, but they're sort of moving away from it. I don't know whether that move came from Axis and Ohs itself or from Microsoft, but it's quite a nice change. It makes things quite nice. In the extras area, they've still got the B vars and L vars mapping if you need to go back and look at them, but that's not the way to work anymore. So let's get into the actual cockpit itself and look at this helicopter. I'm not going to do every part of it, just enough to sort of get things started and get us off the ground. The first thing is, this is where we're going to concentrate most of the work, is looking at these 8 switches here. That's what we need to get things up and running, and there's a couple of other things we need to do. We obviously need to map the collective and the throttle, so they need to be mapped. On the end of the collective here, if I can just swing the view around enough for you to see, let's move across a bit. It's got 2 sort of secret hidden buttons that are important: starting the engine and switching on the governor, so we'll need to map those. And on the back wall here, a fuel valve. It's in the on position by default, so we need to model that. And up in the roof we've got the magneto switch and the magnificently named engine plasma that we need to work with. The mixture switch, mixture lever, and the brake on the rotor, so that when we finish we can actually disengage the engine and then stop the rotors. So they're the ones I'm going to deal with today. So let's get back into firstly we'll start with the collective here, get that sorted out. So that is actually one of the axes. I've got a honeycomb throttle quadrant here, so I'm going to allocate this axis here to the helicopter collective. So if I move this lever here, you can see the numbers going up and down, and it's identified that correctly, so we can just add that. And what you'll notice is that the collective is actually halfway up, and if you looked at the variable for it, you'll see it's at 50%, but my lever is fully back. You can see here that the lever is fully down and it's only going down to 50%. It goes up to 100, but it only goes down to 50, and that's because, if you're going to here, it thinks the axis starts at 0, but it actually should start at minus 16383, so it's kind of symmetrical on both sides. So it'll be minus 16383, and we'll save that now, and you'll see now I've got the full range of movement on the collective. And we get the same problem here with the throttle as well. So if we add that axis in, again there is a helicopter throttle, so make sure you use the helicopter throttle, not the ordinary throttle. So double click on there. If we move that lever so it identifies it, it's going to have the same problem, that it won't go below the halfway mark. So we're wise to that event. We can type it in straight away, click on add, and now if I move my axis, you can see the throttle turning, so that's fine. And the last one I want to allocate is the mixture. Now there isn't a specific mixture for the helicopter, so we're going to use the ordinary aircraft mixture one, which has its own kind of minor little wrinkle with it. You can see that it's moving okay, but it's starting at -1. This time it really needed to start at 0, so we adjust that there. And now if we go up and check that out, as I move the throttle lever, it's moving the mixture lever correctly as well. If you don't do that, it won't register anything for the first half of the movement of the lever on the throttle. So that's the kind of 3 wrinkles there. Each one had its own little oddity. So let's go back and look at these switches here. Now the master one is obviously coming up saying battery. If I was confronted with this for the very first time, I would watch the simulator events, and you can see at the moment there's a lot of stuff going on automatically in the background. So I'm going to ask it to ignore the spam. Anything that sends more than 20 messages gets ignored, and I'm going to clear the list. So I'm only looking at what happens newly. So when I click on the master switch, you see that it's sent what looks like 2 commands. In fact, it's sending this one here. This is one of the new ones, these input events, and that triggers the old legacy key event of toggle the master battery. Now sometimes with these new input events, it triggers a lot of other stuff in the background that we can't see. So if I'm unsure, I would use this, but I'm going to use the legacy one because I've already got lots of switches and lots of layouts using the master battery, because that's been there forever. And pretty much these older ones, the masters, the strobes, the pump, the alternator, because they've been around for so long, don't rely on this new input, so we can use the old one quite happily. So I'm going to continue to use that old one just for the moment. So if I bring my Stream Deck in, what I will need to do is to look for events and variables in Axis and Ohs, and I like using the script editor window. I'm not actually going to write a script for this, it's fairly simple, but I've got access to these 2 buttons here, so I can look for a sim event, and I'm looking for something to do with the battery. So if we filter for the battery, and what I'm looking for is there a toggle command? And there's a toggle master battery. So 1 click to highlight it, and then right hand click copies it to the clipboard. And in Lorbe's extensions there's the toggle function, and I'm going to label that master, and I'm going to put the label at the top because there's an indicator here that I want to be able to see later. So I'm now going to Control V to paste in the command, and we need to send a 1 to make it active, to make it work. Now it needs a variable, it needs to know what is happening so it can decide whether to turn that indicator on or not. So we use the variable, and we'll hunt down a battery variable, and we want to look at the electrical master battery. So do the same thing as before, right hand click, copy and paste it in here, and this is what it's looking for to see if it's on or not. Come down the bottom, submit that, and now we can test it. So it's already detected that the switch is on, the indicator's on. If I press the button here, the master goes off and the switch goes off. So it's on and it's off. So that's pretty much it for the master, the battery, and the next one of course is the strobe. So we'll do the same as before. We'll look to see if there's a toggle. Not every command has a toggle version. Some have an on and an off, and you have to use a different method. But this one here has got the toggle, so we'll copy that. Label it up. And we'll do the pasting in. And again, we need a variable for it. Don't assume it's going to have the same format. And we're looking to see the light strobe. So we'll copy that, drop it into here, on value of 1, submit it, and then test it. Strobe light's gone on, indicator's gone on, off and off. That's working. Next one across is the fuel pump. So as before, filter down looking for the pump. In the fuel system here, we've got toggle the electric fuel pump. There are possibly more than one pump, but we'll just go with this one here. Right hand click, and it's a toggle, so we'll toggle it. And all the ones I've done so far are just straightforward K events. We haven't had to change that at all. And all the variables have been A variables, aircraft variables. So let's hunt down the pump variable. And this is the one we're after here, the general engine fuel pump. And I want to look at the switch. This pump on here only works if both the switch is on and the electricity is flowing. I just want to know about the position of the switch, so I'm going to go with that one here. That's what I want. Yep, definitely. And it's got an index on it, which means it needs to know what pump we're talking about. And we happen to be talking about pump 1 because there is only one pump. And we'll just test that now. We'll just press the button. The pump's up, switch is up, and the indicator light is on. So yeah, that's all okay. That one catches me out quite often. I often jump on that one, and I need to double check this one here. But that's it, we've got it right. The alternator. Again, just... Now it's no go typing alt here because that would bring up altimeter and all sorts of stuff. Alternator. There we are. And I want to toggle the master alternator. So we're doing well. And of course we need the variable for it. Alternator. And general engine master alternator. It's got the index on it, so we'll have to tell it that it's number 1 we're after. On value of 1, and we'll just check that's working. Yep, on, off, and lights working. So far so good. Let's just move across a little bit. We now get to the kind of first interesting button, an unusual one. This one is for the clutch. It's the switch that connects the engine to the rotors. When we start the engine without the drag of the rotors, and when the engine's up to speed we can then connect the two together. So we don't want to do that prematurely, and we certainly don't want to disconnect when we're in flight. So it's got a safety cover on it, so we need to flip the safety cover up and turn the switch on and put the cover down. So that's what we want to achieve. Now there's a couple of different ways of doing it. Obviously we can do it with the Stream Deck. What we want to do, I think, is to watch that event. So we're going to watch the simulator events, ignoring the spam, clearing the list, and we've got this command here for the engine cover, which is a 1 when it's open and a 0 when it's closed, and it's just one of these new input events. So that's what we're going to use to do that. So let's bring in Axis and Ohs, and we're going to look for this sim event. So somewhere in here, these are the new Microsoft input events. That's the one that we want. It's an input event. Right hand click to copy it. Now it's not a toggle, so we're going to go with an on-off event. So we want to be able to move the cover. Now it's not a K event, it's an input event, and the on value is a 1. It's the same event, an input event, to close it. It's just got a different value here, so we can use the same event twice, but we just need to put a 0 here, and we need to read a variable for it to find out if it's open or not. And if we go down here, I've looked for cover and I'm not finding the cover. Some of these variables only appear once you've used them, but one of the things that I've discovered is if there is an event, the actual variable has got exactly the same name. So I've already copied the event. I just read the variable, the IE variable, and it's the same variable, and the on is a 1. So we'll submit that. So what should happen now, when I press that button, it should open it, and the indicator light comes on the Stream Deck, and it closes it. So that's kind of the beauty of these input events, that the event and the variable has exactly the same name. It speeds up the development. Right, so we now need to look at the switch. Let's open the cover and we'll watch the simulator event when we move the actual switch itself, the clutch switch. Now the clutch has been around for some time, so it still has the old legacy event, but we might as well use the new input events because you know how they work now. So let's bring up Axis and Ohs. In fact, I'm going to move this. I'm going to have the cover above and have the actual switch underneath. So we know it's an on-off event that we're going to use, so we can put that in, and just need to hunt down the event. So we're going to insert the sim event for the clutch, and I'm going to pick it here from the new input events. Copy that and drop it into here. Don't forget it's a new one, it's the input event, and this is the clutch. It's a 1 when it's on, it's an input event, it's a 0 when it's off, and the variable I've already captured. I don't even have to go looking for it. I can just put in there. Just out of academic interest, if I do look for the sim variable for the clutch, is it there? No, the clutch cover's there, but it's not there yet. So we'll go for a 1 and submit that, and we just change the switch. So it's going on and off quite happily. The indicator light's working. If we go back and look for the sim variable this time, see if it's appeared this time. Now we've used it, now it's there. So one of the bits of advice is, if you're starting doing this, go and switch everything on and off and see if you can make them appear. It might work, but anyway, have confidence that if you can find the event, you've got the variable as well. Interestingly, let's close the cover. There's no kind of connection between the two programmatically. So if I press the clutch button, you see the indicator lights come on. You can actually move the switch. It's on underneath the cover. You could write some code to stop that happening. You could only have the switch moving if the cover was open. Maybe I'll do all of that on another video. It's a whole different topic. But at the moment, I'm kind of happy with it. We can do some other things with it. There's a couple of choices you've got here. Let's bring Axis and Ohs back into play. Let's tidy up a little bit. It may seem a bit weird having to press 2 buttons. You might like it that way because it kind of emulates the real thing, or you could bring it all together into one single operation. I've written some scripts already and I've stored them in a script group for my Cabri G2. So these are all my scripts, and I've got one here which will turn the clutch on. If I double click on that, and if I talk you through the script, what it does is it opens the cover. That's the 1, open the cover, wait for half a second, then switch the switch on, wait for half a second, and then it's got a 0 here, close the cover. And I can show you that working without even putting it on a button. I can just click this test button here and you'll see this go through its steps. Open the cover, switch the switch on, close it down. And I've written another script which would turn it off. So if I click on test now, opens it, look, and does that. So we could just use some events to make that happen if we wanted. You could probably do it as an on-off and have the 2 different scripts. In fact, let's try that. Let's put an on-off button. And we'll tidy up later once we made a choice which way we do it. And I'll spell clutch properly as well this time. So this would be an ordinary K event, funny enough. Although it's got IE events in it, when it calls it, it is actually just it thinks it's an ordinary event. So let's filter down. And in my Cabri, I'm going to have this one as the clutch on. So we'll copy that and drop that into here. The 1 doesn't really make any difference. You just have to have something in here, otherwise it won't trigger it. And we can have the off version in here, so we'll drop the off version into here. I'll put a 0, but it doesn't make any difference at all. And obviously we need to read that variable that we had before, and it's going to be an IE one, so we need to read the position of that clutch. Now luckily it now appears. Here we go. And I want to read the position of the switch. And click on submit. So, oops, let's get rid of that. That's what's stopping me move. Right, so we press that button. Ooh. And it doesn't really work very well. That's it. Sorry, I was pressing it two for too long. It was repeating itself. So open it, close it. Now there is another version of the script if you want to see sort of a completeness. This one here does it all with one single script. So this one here opens the clutch cover, waits for half a second, and then it reads the condition of the switch. Is it on or off? And it reverses it. This exclamation mark changes a 0 to a 1 or a 1 to a 0. It's a logical not. And then it writes it back in. So all within one script, it does this toggling. That's a toggle type command. And then close the button. So what we could do is use that button there, and I'm just going to change this to clutch because that's what this one's called, and this one is called clutch. It's the same script being called both times, and we're just using this here. Submit that. So it's now calling this new script here. So with one script I can switch it off and switch it on. I don't need to use two scripts. So if you're happy with that, that's another way of doing it. So you've got choices here. What I'm going to do is I quite like that one. So I just got a single clutch button. And although I've kind of removed the safety feature of having to press two buttons, it wasn't very safe anyway. Alright, let's get on back into the nav lights and landing lights are pretty much the same as before. They're legacy items. They've been around for some time. It's just a question of have they got a toggle version. So I want to have nav lights first of all. So in lights there is a toggle nav lights, so we can bring that in. And the variable for that one is nav light. So just check the nav light. Yeah, that's working. I'm going to turn the clutch off while I'm here. And landing lights for the next one. Landing lights toggle. And the variable for that, light landing. Instead of landing lights, it's light landing. Always amused me, that one. And we'll just test that button while we're about it. See, I can see the landing lights moving on and off and the indicator light working perfectly. Let's tidy that up. Done. Okay, now we come to another interesting one. This carb heat has 3 positions to it, and again I would suggest watching the events, ignore the spam, and watch what happens. So if I move it up 1 click, it's actually triggering the de-ice, the engine de-ice, and that's in position 1. Up again is position 0, and down the bottom is position 2. So that's 2, 1, 0. So we've got a 3-position switch. Now I've done a whole video on how the 3-position switch works, and I'll put a reference to that in the description below if you really want to see the sort of in depth how the script works. I'll show you the script, but if you really want to understand it, you need to watch a whole other video. What it does is I've got this function here called the indexed sequence, and it runs through the sequence from position 2 to position 1 to 0 to 1, and then when it gets to the end it goes round again. So it goes round this sequence. It looks at the current position of the engine de-icer, the carb heat, and when it finds a match, it then gets the next value and writes that value back into the variable, so it moves along. But it needs to know where it got to last, so it's got this index, and I've called it the de-ice index. You can call this local variable anything you like, so long as you keep it consistent across the 2. This one here has to match what you discovered here as your input. Can't change that, and it must be exactly right with the capitalization. Can't change that at all. So that one's up to you. So if you want to know in depth how this works, there's another video to go and watch, but that's the command I'm going to call. So let's bring up my Axis and Ohs, and it's just an event. We're just going to send this command, so there's no indicator, I'm afraid, for this. If you want to, you can use a text gauge, and again in my video it shows you how to make the graphics to make that work, but I'm just going to use an event here just so I can trigger it, make it work. So this is my carb heat, and it's a K event because it's going to appear in my ordinary events here. Although I wrote it, it regards it as an ordinary one, and it's this one here. So copy that, paste it into here, and the 1 again totally irrelevant, but we'll just use the 1 and submit that. So let's move things across. As I press this button here, it will go through the sequence: top, middle, bottom, middle, top. So that's the script, and I'll leave that just for a few seconds there for you to see that, and that works quite well. Okay, so that's the entire switchboard done. Now let's just turn that clutch off again. We now need to move on to, well, the fuel valve will be the next thing to move to, so let's change the view here. We want to look at this one here and see what's going on with that. So we can get Axis and Ohs back again and watch the events. And it's toggling the fuel valve for the engine 1, or we could use this IE fuel cutoff, whichever you prefer. Let's go with the new version. So it's not a toggle as such, it's an on-off event. Oops. For the fuel. fuel cutoff. You have to remember to make sure it's IE every time, and we'll submit that. Let's keep an eye on things down here. So fuel is on, fuel is off, and the indicator's correct. So it's nice and quick to develop that one. Now I need to go and look at the magneto and the plasma. So we're going to change our view. And we'll watch what's going on here. Let's clear the list. And there is a magneto here. Now, although it's been around for some time, I've found that it doesn't actually work with the magneto. And that's why we're here, look at the plasma as well. And there's an IE engine plasma. So, again, these should be quite quick to develop. We'll do the magneto first. So again, using the input events, copy that. And that's looking okay. Yeah, indicator's working. And the on-off working, so we're going to do the plasma one. The plasma is really just another, it's like a spark plug, like a magneto. Really ought to look up and find out more details about it. I've never come across it before. Is it just a helicopter thing, or is it just... There we go. Is it a more advanced engine? Can I fly older aircraft? I have no idea, to be honest. Okay, so let's just check the plasma is working. So again, we'll park that about there. Plasma on, plasma off, mag on, mag off. Perfect. Right. Next thing we need to look at now is the governor. Sounds so dramatic. The governor. and the starter switch. How we do? Well, the starter switch, which on the far side is just a push switch, but the governor, if you watch the event for the governor, let's again bring Axis and Ohs in. And watch the simulator events. When I switch the governor, it actually switches two governors on at the same time, so it's actually sending two commands. So I'm afraid this is when you can't really avoid the scripting bit. We've got a script for governor on, so we can send a 1 to both switch 1 and 2, and we've got a governor off. So we could do that with an on-off command and call the two different ones, or this one here, governor toggle. And I like the governor toggle one, it's quite neat, all in a single script. Again, it does what we saw before, that it reads the governor switch 1 condition, inverts it and writes it back. So if it was on, it becomes off, it's off, it becomes on, and the same for switch number 2. So with a single command we can make both of them switch on and off. So that's what I'm going to use. So it is going to be an on-off for the governor. And it's K event, it's one of the old ones, but it's again one of my scripts. So in my Cabri I want that governor toggle, and the on value is 1, off value is 1, but we are going to have to read a variable. And there is this one here, but I'd quite like to use this IE version, so I'm going to pinch it from here as a key event, because we haven't used it before really. This one here. So we only need to read switch 1 because they both change in unison. So we'll copy that one and we'll read that variable here. Now it's only because we haven't used it before that it hasn't appeared. Once we've used it once, it'll appear. But that's the way around it. If you can't find the actual variable, just say take it from the event and put it in. So we'll submit that. So now we can watch the governor. See the switch move here and back again, and both switch 1 and governor switch 1 and 2 both worked. So we're getting really close to the end now. The only one left to do is the rotor break, and that is going to be just an event. If we look for that here, sim event, and let's just look for a rotor, and not the key event, sorry, that one there, the rotor break here. So we'll copy that, and it's just an event, it's not an on-off, it's a strange button. So there's no indicator for it or anything like that, it's just an event, and we'll submit that. And if we go and watch the break in action, let's go up here, and I'm just going to let bring that on. If I just press that button there, I'm going to press the brake button there. Doesn't matter what I do, if I press the brake button, it kind of wants to go back. It flicks up and then goes back. So if you hold it down, it sort of pulses, and then you can let go. I've got the repeat left on. If you look here, the repeat's on, so you just hold the button down and it repeats. If you just do it as a single shot, it goes up and goes back, and it's not particularly effective with one shot. You have to hold the button down, but that works. So that's really it. That's everything now programmed in as far as I can see. I think I've got every single switch done now that I said I would do. Okay, what I'll do is I will pause this. Well, in fact, I'll stop, and I'll probably just do a little test flight and show you the startup procedure. Well, there was actually one button I forgot to allocate. Slightly important. I forgot to put the engine starter in it, so let's bring that in. And that's just an event. Engine starter. Okay, I'm going to go and do a little test flight now. Okay, let's see if we can actually get this engine started. So, master switch on. We'll put the strobe on just so that people know what we're doing. Put the mixture to full, crack the throttle a little bit, magnetos on, plasma on. Let's just check. Yep, they're both on, mixture's full. And fuel pump on, we should see the pressure rise. Okay. Let's try the starter. Now give it a bit more throttle. Let's okay. Engage the clutch. Really should have looked at the checklist. I'm kind of doing this from memory. I looked at it once before just to make sure I had all the switches I needed. Governor light's still on, so alternator. That'll be handy. Let's turn the governor on. So, if I remember right, I need to get that into the green arc here. So these warning lights are both off now. So in theory, just raising the collective should let's turn the nav lights on. Oh, it's lifting off. Okay, I'm not going to show the rest of my flight. First time flying a helicopter. And I'll see you in another recording.